Good Thursday afternoon to you. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Plenty of Cavs talk. A little later, we'll be joined by Amico from hoopswire.com. Dive into the Cavs, just a game and a half out of first place in the Eastern Conference, currently in third spot, playing well, 30 wins already on the season. But we're going to begin by talking Browns football. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, an assistant GM for the Browns, named the new head guy in Minnesota. He was the general manager. His introductory press conference had a lot of good things to say about the Browns and the Browns front office.
Big thanks to Andrew Berry, my big bro. I think everybody in their life needs somebody who sees more in them than they see in themselves. And for me, that was Andrew Berry. When he brought me for that role, man, I don't know that I was like, you sure? I believe in myself, but he's always just challenged me, pushed me to step outside of my comfort zone, and he's been incredible to me, and I'm proud that he's a mentor of mine. I'll miss those late night texts about 2026 trade scenarios, but no stone unturned. That's the standard. That's what we'll live by at the Vikings, and I learned that from him. Cleveland, you have a rock star in that seat. Please appreciate him.
And Jeff Phelps, 92.3 The Fan, Browns pre, post, halftime, Cavs pre, post, halftime. Really nice for the Browns front office. I mean, think about it. The number 2 guy gets a general manager's job, and this was a franchise that couldn't get head coach or GM right for how many years? And now there is an Andrew Berry general manager tree.
Gee, that's thrilling, Dave. Okay, it's good. It's good for them. I'm glad. That's outstanding. All that they get 2 third-round compensatory draft picks that they can trade. So that's what I'm most excited about. If Andrew Berry, weren't in place, maybe Mensah would have been the guy here at some point. But Andrew Berry's here. According to Mensah, we have a rock star. So that's really good. I like Andrew Berry, and hopefully he can find somebody else that he can groom and be successful enough to move on to another gig. Because that's nothing but good for the Browns, because while he's working for the Browns, he's doing good things. That's the theory, right?
Absolutely. And those 2 third-round picks are because they developed a minority who went on to become a general manager. That's the reason they get the 2 compensatory third-round picks. All right, let's look at it this way. How far are the Browns from being, one of the top teams in the AFC? We thought they were there this year. Growth is very rarely linear in football or any sport. How close are the Browns to being a legitimate threat in the AFC?
I think they are now. To be perfectly honest, I think they really are. They had a beat-up quarterback all season long. If they have a healthy quarterback, whether his name is Mayfield or Keenum, don't you think they win 2 more games and then you're in the playoffs? Right now, the teams with the best record in the regular season are sitting at home for the most part. Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Dallas, they're all out. And I think the Browns, without question, you win a couple more games, you're right there. And better quarterback play next year, a healthy offensive line, so maybe you add a piece or 2. And you clearly need some playmakers at wide receiver, because the rest of the division is clearly passing you by in that area. And for that matter, so is the rest of the league. But certainly our own division is. So I don't think they're too far away. Make a couple of free agent signings for offense, make sure your quarterback is healthy, no matter what his name is, and go from there.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, who had, at the beginning of the year, who had the Bengals and the 49ers in the conference championship games? Raise your hand, and you're lying. If you're raising your hand, you're lying. All right.
Dave, remember,
these are 5.
The Bengals won only 4 games last year. Who had them doing anything this year? So the Browns are in better shape now than the Bengals were last year. And they get Jamar Chase. He's terrific. You add him to T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. That's 3 wide receivers who I think are better than anybody on the Browns right now. They have weapons around Joe Burrow. So they're going to go get offensive linemen to protect Joe Burrow. They'll be better. The Browns need a healthy quarterback and some playmakers at wide receiver. So to me, you need, that And I think that's relatively easy to find.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. All right, these are 5 positions to watch in the offseason, according to Browns.com, and we've already touched on a couple of them. Wide receiver, that's an obvious one. Defensive tackle now becomes questionable because Malik McDowell, Malik Jackson, you've got some areas to fill there. Defensive end, we'll get to that question here in a minute. Linebacker, and as you mentioned, offensive tackle. Now, the question I have for you, do you see Jarvis, Landry coming back, and do you think the Browns are able to entice Jadeveon Clowney? They need more than Jarvis Landry at wide receiver, but Jadeveon Clowney helps defensive end quite a bit.
I would be surprised if Jarvis Landry is back. And not because they don't want Jarvis Landry. I think they want Jarvis. And I think they're going to have to ask Jarvis to take a pay cut and restructure his contract. He's making a lot of money for next year. And I don't know in this offense if a wide receiver of Jarvis's abilities, and not that he doesn't have them, is worth that kind of money. So if they go back to Jarvis and say, we'd like to restructure, we'd like to give you a longer contract, change out the money a little bit, it wouldn't surprise me if Jarvis said, hey, fellas, thank you. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm out of here. And he goes and tries something else somewhere. And so that's a possibility there. I think they want him. My guess is if I'm him, I'm thinking, yeah, you know what? I'm going to test things out elsewhere. And so there's that. I'd love to have Jadeveon Clowney back. I wanted Jadeveon Clowney before they ever brought him here. And so I thought he did a really nice job, Dave. And he's not Myles Garrett, but he doesn't have to be. So he just needs to play like he did last year. And I would sign him, and I would sign him to a multi-year contract, put him over on the other side from Myles Garrett, and just go play. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I would try to incentivize it, that multi-year contract with games played. You play more games, you make more money. You make a lot of money if you can play all 16 or all 17 of them now. Because if he's on the field for 17 games, there's going to be good things happening with that defense. And the kind of under the radar area that I think they really need to improve is offensive tackle. I think that factored in to the struggles Baker Mayfield had. Clearly, he wasn't healthy, but the problems at tackle with Jedrick Wills and everybody else, that hurt as much as anything. Maybe besides the wide receivers struggling.
All right, but what do you mean? And how do you do that? You used the first-round pick on Jedrick Wills. Are you giving up on Jedrick already? Or are you assuming that Jack Conklin is not going to be back or not going to be healthy or not going to be what he was, and you're going to move Jedrick over to right tackle and bring in a left tackle?
That's probably what I'm looking at. The injuries to Conklin were pretty significant. You get the elbow, you get everything was breaking down on Jack Conklin. And
torn patellar tendons aren't easy. Those are tough.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'm curious about, how much of Jedrick Will's struggles were because he was trying to play on one leg? I thought there would be a bigger step forward. And that's the thing, I know everybody's beat up and you got to play through injury. But, man, when you're young and trying to make a name for yourself, especially on the offensive line, it's hard enough playing on 2 legs. Try playing on 1 or 1.5.
Against the best pass rushers in the NFL. But how about this? If everybody's willing to chalk up Baker Mayfield's season to injuries and that when he's healthy, he'll be fine, isn't it the same thing with Jedrick Wills?
Yeah, it should be. Fair enough. If you thought he was the guy to take it 10, then you should think, whoa, watch out in year 3. But again, you got to get it right. The quarterback, you got to get right. You got to be right on the quarterback, and you got to be right on the left tackle because those things are going to snowball. So here's, as we wrap this whole thing up, how much confidence do you have that Andrew Berry can get done what he needs to get done? His first 2 years, both draft and free agency, made a lot of sense. You looked at what he did and you saw where he was going. How much confidence do you have that he can go out and get the wide receivers and make sure the quarterback play is there and and fix what he needs to fix on the lines?
Those are good questions. If I'm him, Dave, I think what I might be looking for more than anything is a couple of key trades. And I say that because of this. If you draft a rookie wide receiver, is there any guarantee that he comes in and he's really good right away? And I don't know that you can do that. You know, Justin Jefferson in Minnesota last year, this year, Jamar Chase in Cincinnati, they're incredible. You know, they're really good. And I wonder, can you get one of those guys, you know, where you're drafting? Maybe, you know, there are a couple of wide receivers who are really highly thought of, and maybe you could get them. And if you're a free agent wide receiver, you've seen this offense. You've seen Odell not work in this offense. As soon as he left, you saw Donovan Peoples-Jones play drop off when he was more of a key target in this offense. And you've not seen Jarvis light it up in this offense. So if you're a free agent, are you really interested in coming here as a wide receiver? If you get paid, yeah, probably. You know, if you get that great big contract, sure, okay. And then you just play football and whatever comes in the offense comes in the offense. But you now have a compensatory third-round pick. Why not trade that for a veteran wide receiver who's under contract for a couple of years, and not to be, you know, mean about this, who doesn't have any choice but to come here and play wide receiver in an offense that hasn't, at least yet, really made wide receivers look good. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they're looking to do what John Dorsey did with Jarvis Landry, which is make a trade to go get a wide receiver.
Yeah, it makes sense because the clock with the rest of the positions is ticking. And the other thing is,
yep,
Baker Mayfield, he's in a, you know, gotta go do it year. He's not that's gonna be the last guy that wants a rookie who has a learning curve to come in as a number one receiver. I mean, it just is.
Yep.
No matter how
Especially
talented it is.
With the other guys in the wide receiver room, guaranteed Donovan Peoples-Jones and Anthony Schwartz, and they are going to be what, second and third year guys. So you got to go get a veteran somewhere to come in here if Jarvis doesn't return to this team.
Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, as well as Cavs pre-post halftime, Browns pre-post halftime, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll continue talking Browns. When we return, we head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. A viewer wants to know about a trade with the Texans that doesn't involve a quarterback. That's straight ahead when Sports4CLE returns. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan and Valley Sports does Cavs pre, post, and halftime. Time for us to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about a possible trade with the Houston Texans.
I'd just like to call and ask about the possibility of the Cleveland Browns trading for Houston Texans left tackle Laramie Tunsil. That would seem to me to boast the Cleveland offense as much as a new quarterback or a fast wide receiver. Thank you.
All right, we appreciate our voicemails. Jeff, I love the idea of trading for Laramie Tunsil. Wouldn't give up a first-round pick, wouldn't give up a second-round pick. He would help on the line. That is a left tackle. You could slide Jedrick Wills over to right tackle where he played in college. As long as it doesn't cost much, I like the idea. But they need to upgrade their wide receiving room 1A, and quarterback play has to be better, 1B.
You wouldn't give up a first-round pick for Tunsil?
No.
You're not going to get him for a third.
Probably not. Unless the Texans are realizing the salary issues that will come with them. I might give up a second. I would not give up the 13th overall pick for Laramie Tunsil.
I would think he would cost you your first and maybe a third. You wouldn't do that?
I don't think so. I don't think I'd give up the 13th. If the Browns were picking where everybody thought they were going to pick in the mid 20s, I'd think about it.
I don't think I would make that deal. And I only say it because I think you might have a better need than another offensive tackle, unless you think Jack Conklin is not coming back. If you think Conklin, if he's not coming back, Dave, his career might be over. And I don't know his contractual situation. We know he's making a lot of money. I don't know how much of a hit it would be if they cut him and moved on from him or had an injury settlement or something like that. I would like Jack Conklin there. He's a terrific right tackle. And I'm not ready to give up on Jedrick Wills yet. So I'd be hard pressed to give up what I think it would take to get Tunsil out of Houston. And I think it would take a lot.
If it does take a first round pick, I would not do it. Second and a third, I might consider, because I think the tackle position concerns me enough. And I'm with you. I think if Conklin's healthy and Jedrick Wills is back, I'm with you. I think that could potentially work. I just think they need to exhaust all options to improve the tackle play. That was behind the quarterback play and the wide receiver play that I think was the most concerning. And it was due to injury. I get it. All right. Browns have said Baker Mayfield will be the starting quarterback 2022. Andrew Berry has to say that. He's not going to say, well, unless you're the Colts and you say, well, we don't know about Carson Wentz just yet. But do you think he's looking at all the potential opportunities to upgrade the position? And here's where I'm going with it. Bill Barnwell, ESPN, kind of looked at some of the scenarios where Aaron Rodgers might end up. And one of those scenarios was having the Browns trade a couple of number one picks and Baker Mayfield to the Packers as part of a deal that would get Aaron Rodgers here. And he says, to be clear, it would still take multiple first-round picks alongside Mayfield to get a deal done. The Packers would need to restructure Mayfield's deal, and you see the thought is that way the Packers kind of get him out. Assuming the Packers have to trade Rodgers, he leaves the NFC. They have somebody that they can make sure they develop Love at the speed they want to, and they have a guy that can come in and potentially play quarterback in Baker Mayfield. So let me ask you, would you do that? If the Packers get crazy and say, give us a couple first-round picks in Baker Mayfield for Aaron Rodgers.
If I was the Browns, yeah, I'd do that. I would. But I don't expect Green Bay to do that. And if Aaron Rodgers goes anywhere, Denver is now the hot spot. The articles are already out. There was talk of it last year, and now Nathaniel Hackett, his offensive coordinator, is going to Denver. Devontae Adams is a free agent. Are they a package deal? I don't see the Browns as a likely landing spot for Aaron Rodgers in any situation. Not sure why I feel that way. I don't think this is the right spot for him. Personally, Denver makes a lot of sense. Denver. Yeah. If you're Aaron Rodgers, you get Devontae Adams, and let's say they're a package deal. What else do you have here? In Denver, they have Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton and maybe Devontae Adams. That's a pretty good bunch.
Yeah, I get it. Again, that's going to be a challenge with any free agent type quarterback or a quarterback that has a no trade clause.
Right.
Is that right now the wide receiving core is not one that you want to have to rely on if you're a quarterback. All right, let's take a look at some free agent quarterbacks who can run Kevin Stefanski's system. This, according to Dog Pound Daily. They come up with Jameis Winston. You see the age and the salary. Marcus Mariota, Mitchell Trubisky, Teddy Bridgewater. Any of those grab your fancy? None of them are making me jump up and down. Just thoughts on one of those guys coming in.
You know what I think of those guys. We're in the same fantasy league, and I picked them all up.
I know you like Mitchell Trubisky, and I know you're intrigued by Jameis Winston. What do you think they would do in that?
Yeah. Here's the thought, okay? Personally, if you ask me, I've seen a lot of Baker Mayfield. You've seen a lot of Baker Mayfield. He's a 500 quarterback so far in his career. Now, the Browns have not been very good, okay? That's not all on Baker, certainly. But I personally think going into the 5th year and knowing there's a big decision to make on the other side and whether you're going to invest the big money in Baker or not, I personally think Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, and Mitch Trubisky are at least comparable options to Baker Mayfield, at least. And I say that because I think their best years are really still ahead of them. You know, Jameis played well in Tampa 1 year, other than interceptions. Then he went to New Orleans and he really kind of curtailed that. Mitch Trubisky look at his numbers comparable to Baker's through the first 3 years, even throughout Baker's injury season here. And they're real comparable. And in that situation, you kind of think, well, all right. My thought is, if you didn't have the decision with Baker coming up, Dave, I think it's a different story. But you're going to have to decide whether you want to invest huge long-term dollars in him, and I don't know that you do. And you either know now. I think if you go into next year wondering, then you already have your answer. My thought.
Yeah. Again, I can't argue with how you arrive at that. Again, that's got to be such a tough decision for Andrew Berry. The one thing is they know better than all of us, and they haven't told us how much of a factor the injury was. We don't know that. That's the piece I also do not think know.
Bridgewater is different than those other 3 guys because the minute you bring in Bridgewater, I think Teddy's best years are behind him. I think his injuries were really tough, and though I think he can play quarterback, if you brought in Teddy Bridgewater, you're thinking, who's your next quarterback? If you bring in Mariota, Trubisky, or Jameis Winston, you think we may have our next quarterback, and you're going to wait to see. So if you're only going to go a year with Baker and wait and see, I think I'd rather go wait and see with Winston or Mariota or Trubisky.
Yeah, again, it's kind of personal choice. None of them, they're kind of all bunched together, like we've said.
Yeah.
All right, we've talked about wide receivers, how important it is. Top free agent wide receivers 2022. Executives weigh in on ESPN.com. They refer to Mike Williams as the exotic option. One of the teams they see as a team to watch is the Browns. Could use a big-bodied target that can stretch the field. And you see, they also mentioned Jacksonville or Chicago. Chargers have $58.2 million cap space. They'd have to use about a third of it for Williams. They have a little bit better options behind them. What do you think, Mike Williams? That's not somebody that makes me jump up and down.
I think exotic is one of the stupidest words used to describe anything in sports. Now that that's out of the way. I like Mike Williams. He's inconsistent. Sometimes he looks really good. I mean, really good. And then he disappears for 4 weeks. That said, I'd still like to have him on our team because he's better than any wide receiver we have. So he's a guy I like a lot. I think Chris Godwin could be a tremendous asset to the Browns, the guy from Tampa Bay who's recovering from a torn ACL. So you'd have to deal with that. My guess is the way ACLs heal now, he'd be ready to go for the start of the season, but you would have to pay through the nose to get Chris Godwin. And I would be willing to do that for him. I think he's that good. And Allen Robinson, I like a lot too. And I think Robinson is a great second option if you don't get Godwin. To me, Godwin's a guy that he takes care of your problem. He's your number one wide receiver. And Allen Robinson gives you a pretty decent guy, I think, to play wide receiver. I think he has great ability. And if it were Robinson or if it were Mike Williams, another sleeper on this list, Dave, Cedric Wilson in Dallas, who has really played well when been given the opportunity. And Michael Gallup went out with a torn ACL late in the season. Cedric Wilson stepped in and played really well. Jerry Jones is chirping about Amari Cooper there. So Wilson may not even make it into free agency. I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas kept him, given their uncertainty with Michael Gallup's injury. And apparently Jerry Jones not being real happy with Amari Cooper, who is another guy who's kind of inconsistent. Sometimes he really puts up huge numbers, and he does that about 4 times a year. And the rest of the time he's okay. And so if I'm the Browns, I'm looking to Godwin and then Robinson, Mike Williams. And I definitely think, Dave, you need to go get one of those guys. I mean, that's an easy solution to a starting wide receiver. And I'm not going to rank them 1, 2, 3 or whatever. You get one of those guys, they're starting for you at wide receiver.
Yeah. And the flip side of it is, you mentioned they'd have to pay a lot for him. Remember, they're paying Jarvis Landry $15-some million. If they don't re-sign him,
that would do it.
There's probably, you're going to have to pay a little bit more. But if they don't re-sign Jarvis Landry, you can go out and get one of those top free agent wide receivers with that money, and it's basically a wash.
Yep.
Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, Valley Sports, covers the Cavs and Browns pre-post halftime. We're going to step aside, take time out. We're going to continue talking Browns. There's also Cavs segment ahead. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, Valley Sports, on the Cavs coverage. So Ben Roethlisberger finally made it official. He announces his retirement today, and Browns fans are saying, finally, a career record 26-2-1 against the Browns, guy from Findlay, Ohio. Jeff, it's safe to say he kind of wanted to make the Browns pay for not drafting him, and he spent a career basically making the Browns pay for not drafting him in the draft.
We did something on our show on Basket and Phelps on the Fan about biggest franchise-altering moves the Browns didn't make in the NFL draft. And we came to the conclusion that the biggest franchise-altering mistake was not drafting Ben Roethlisberger. And the reason was twofold. Because you didn't get him, he would have solidified your quarterback spot, in theory anyway. Hopefully you put a decent team around him. And he solidified the spot of your main rival. So because of that, it was a double whammy. The next biggest move was taking, I think it was Braylon Edwards the next year, and not taking a jump and getting Aaron Rodgers. So, Roethlisberger's, did you hear his little speech, by the way? It was good. So emotionless, and reading a document, and I don't expect Ben to be Tom Hanks, but by God, he wasn't good. It was awful.
Well, I think he did that so he didn't lose it. The last thing in the world he wanted to do was lose it in a pre-recorded farewell speech. All right, so here are 3 free agents in the AFC North that the Browns should consider going after, according to Dog Pound Daily. We got a tight end, CJ Uzama from the Bengals, wide receiver Ray McLeod from the Steelers, and defensive tackle Calais Campbell of the Ravens. Of all of those, I like Calais Campbell. Give me Calais Campbell, please.
He's the only one I like.
Yeah. I'm. If you're going to get a wide receiver, it's got to be better than Ray McLeod. No offense to Ray. And CJ Uzama, he's doing just fine for the Bengals. But I want.
And you have Harrison Bryant and David Njoku.
Yeah.
And of course, still Austin Hooper, at least for now.
Yep. Yeah, that's another one. Boy, that if you want to nitpick, and I know that Andrew Berry had to get a tight end for this offense. Yeah. That one didn't work out very well.
He's a good tight end. He's not worthy of being the guy who was the number one paid tight end when the Browns brought him in. That sums it up. If he wants to come back and the Browns want him back on a lesser deal, great. But I think, Dave, he's probably the third best receiving tight end option that the Browns have. And I don't mean that to discredit Austin as much as I say it to praise David Njoku, who I think is underused, and Harrison Bryant, who won the Mackey Award in college, and I think is a pretty good receiving tight end. So those two guys I like a lot more than Austin Hooper, but I think Hooper's probably a better blocker. So do you want to pay that kind of money for a blocker? I don't, unless he's playing tackle.
Yeah, left tackle preferably. I'm with you. You know, Njoku is a guy that's intriguing. He should be a matchup nightmare for defenses, and they really haven't unlocked his full potential yet. But I see where you're going with that. I see elite tight end. He's got to be a little more consistent. He's got to stop dropping the ball. And I think he will. He's still a young guy, even though he's out of his. He was 20, I believe, when they drafted him. So he's a young guy getting ready for his second contract.
I want him here, and I would like to see him featured in the offense. And I also think Harrison Bryant's a really good receiving tight end. So, okay, if Kevin Stefanski's offense uses tight ends, don't just throw them out there to block. Because if you're going to have them block, then go get another lineman and put him in there. You know, which they've done. We've seen that. But I just think that kind of talent might make a larger contract guy in Austin Hooper expendable.
Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, as well as Cavs pre, post, and halftime. And I'm going to step aside. We're going to turn our attention to the Cavs. Cavs with 30 wins on the year, 30-19. Last time they had 30 wins back on January 31st, 2018. They went to the NBA Finals that year. We're talking Cavs when Sports4CLE returns. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Cavs won their 30th game last night. They beat the Bucks, and here is what Giannis had to say about the Cavs and the team he sees on the floor this year.
You know, it's not the Cleveland that we knew in the past years. Like they're a good team, you know. So they have I think they have better records than us right now. So it's a team that we, you know, got to be careful. We got to scout better. We got to make sure we respect them even more now because they're a playoff team. They're up there in the fight, fighting for the title themselves.
And Jeff, that shows you how far the Cavs have come. He's not just saying that. He's saying, you know, they are a legitimate playoff team. I mentioned the last time they had 30 wins, they were 30-20 back on July 31st, or January 31st, rather, 2018. They had just beat the Heat by 2 at home to go to 30-20. When you look at this team, realistically, where can they finish in the Eastern Conference?
It's I think it's a really tough thing to predict right now, Dave, even though they're 49 games in, which is stunning. I can't believe how quickly the season has gone by. But look at how jumbled up things are in the Eastern Conference right now. It doesn't take much for a team that's sitting where the Cavs are right now in third to drop down to 6th, 7th, even 8th. And it doesn't take much for a team that's in 10th place right now to jump up to third. It's only 5 or 6 games, I believe. I to be realistic about this, I don't think the Cavs are going to drop, and because they've been playing so consistently, I don't think they're going to drop in a huge way. I also, and maybe I just can't let myself think this, I can't see them winning the Eastern Conference in the regular season. I'd be hard pressed to think they'd be 2. I'd be hard pressed to think they're able to stay where they are right now at 3, considering they've lost 2 of their key guys this year, in Colin, Sexton, and Ricky Rubio. I do think they have every possibility of finishing between 6th and 3rd, which would be huge. There are a couple of key teams in the Eastern Conference who are going to be really good. Brooklyn and Milwaukee, I think, in particular. And Miami's always tough. And then, like Atlanta's been struggling. Atlanta's a pretty good basketball team. And then the Chicago Bulls, we haven't even mentioned, they've been terrific. So there's some pretty good teams. And the Cavs are one of them. So I do think they're going to make the playoffs. I'd be surprised if they don't. And the only, knock on wood, the only reason I think they wouldn't make the playoffs is if they ended up with another major injury, which, clearly they've lost 2 guys to the season already in Colin Sexton and Ricky Rubio, and they've lost Lauri Markkanen for an undisclosed period of time, and he's been the key to the whole thing. I think they have a real chance to make the playoffs, and man, that'll be fun.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised when I answer this again, that came from a fan, a viewer. And my thought was somewhere between 3 and 7, like you. I don't think they're going to drop below 7. I mean, if they host a first round playoff series, that's huge. That's huge for a young team.
That would be unbelievable. So where do they need to if they could do that? What I'd love to see them do, Dave, just avoid the play-in tournament. But think about the teams we just talked about. If the Cavs finish 5th, 6th in that range, you could end up with Milwaukee or Brooklyn in the first round. Who knows where they're going to play out. And so that's a real nasty first round series. And though the Cavaliers have shown they can play and compete with those teams, I sure wouldn't like to see them in the first round.
So how do they get better? The trade deadline's 2 weeks from today, I believe. It's the 10th. I think that's Thursday. So I think it's 2 weeks from today. What do they add to get better?
Well, I think they picked up an asset today, the disabled players exemption that they were awarded because of Ricky Rubio's season-ending injury. And that means, and it's somewhere around $8 million, they can go bring in a player and have just fit them in without having to trade dollar for dollar or go sign a free agent and bring a guy in at that kind of a rate. And so that gives you a real nice piece to add somebody. I take a look at what they have. They are playing a big team lineup, with Markkanen and Mobley and Allen. Now Markkanen's out. Dean Wade has stepped up. I know everybody thinks you should add somebody on the wing, either at the 2-guard spot or at the small forward spot. Isaac Okoro can be one of those guys. How can you go wrong with adding scoring punch on the wing? And also, Dave, if you're going to base your team around being taller and really athletic and good defensively inside, how about going and getting another tall, defensive-minded big guy who can do some other things? I would just keep that in mind here as Markkanen is coming back from his ankle injury and Dean Wade is starting. If somebody happens to present themselves on the market, and it happens all the time in the NBA, a team decides they're out, they want to, get rid of a contract. And so just pay attention. Though everybody rightfully thinks wing, if you're going to go big, might as well go big.
All right, before I let you go, it sounds like the Cavs don't really want to trade Isaac Okoro, don't really want to trade Colin Sexton. I get that. Given that, who are some guys who are some guys that they realistically could add that would give them some scoring punch? What kind of guys are you looking at?
Wow. Oh, Dave, the names are pretty common around the NBA. You hear the same names of guys who could possibly be traded, and they've been in this situation for a while. Buddy Hield in Sacramento, his name is always out there. And if you watch the Cavs play in Sacramento, Buddy just lit it up from the outside. He was really good, and he's gotten better as he's been in the league. And so does Sacramento want to move him? Maybe. Indiana has not had a good season. There are a lot of guys in Indiana who have been rumored to be in trades. That's interesting. Robert Covington from the Blazers, his name has been thrown out in trade talks, and he's always been a really interesting player. So I would just say, look at the names that are commonly thrown around out there and see if they're a fit for the Cavaliers. And some of them really are, so I would think those are the names to keep an eye on as we approach the trade deadline.
Jeff Phelps from 92.3 The Fan, also Valley Sports, Cavs pre, post, and halftime. Jeff, as always, man, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you having me.
All right, Jeff Phelps. You can listen to him 10 o'clock in the morning on 92.3 The Fan, Baskin and Phelps. You can also see him before every Cavs game on Valley Sports, the pre-game, the halftime, and the post-game as well. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Cavs. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com will join us. We'll hear from JB Bickerstaff about the Cavs, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Cavs on Sports4CLE. Head coach JB Bickerstaff talked about the reasons and the recipe for the Cavs' success so far this season.
They have no fear because there's a large level of trust in that locker room. And nobody ever feels like they're out there on their own. You know what I mean? Like no matter what's going on, good or bad, they always feel like somebody's got their back. And when you have that type of support system, you're going to give yourself a chance. You can have all the talent in the world and have poor chemistry, and you're going to underachieve every time. You can have less talent and more chemistry, and you'll overachieve. The beauty of it is, like, you can't put numbers to it. You have to put time and care into it. And that's the human aspect of what we do, right? The computers want to take all that away from us. But, like, there's so much more to be said about, especially in team, right? Togetherness, a genuine trust and care for one another, like that support, that gives you an opportunity every night to be more than what you are as an individual.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com joins us. And Sam, I'm not usually big on the chemistry thing, but with the Cavs, there is something to what JB Bickerstaff is talking about. You can see that when you watch them play.
Yeah, if you don't have a super duper star, which clearly they don't have that kind of superstar, it does come down to chemistry. Having a few good players that are pretty good, potentially all-star caliber players, but it does come down to, the old team in the truest sense rally cry, and that's really what they've done so far. The Cavaliers, we've heard Kevin Love say it multiple times, they're a share the wealth team on offense. Defensively, same type of thing. It's taking a collective unit, kind of steering the opposing guards and even bigs into the Cavs bigs. It's really been cohesiveness all the way around, and that goes whether they have their starting five, their regulars out there, whether they've had some injuries and have had guys fill in. It's really a philosophical thing, and everybody's bought into it at this point, and that's why you're the number 3 seed in the East.
Yeah, and when you look at it, it really manifests itself on the defensive side of the basketball. That's where you can see a lot of what they're talking about. And let's take a look. Cavs notes this tweet. Cavs have held their opponents to 100 points or less for the 20th time this season. And that is in 2016, 2017, they held them under 121 times. Last night, also their 18th win by at least 10 points and 15th victory against teams with a winning record. So all good stuff. All signs of a team that has staying power. I think a few weeks ago I asked you, can they continue playing like this? And the answer was yes. And as it goes on, you just see more of the same kind of play.
Yeah, and let's not forget one of the things that they did last night or Wednesday night was they held the defending champions, their full team, under 100 points. And this was after trailing early. So one of the things that the Cavs seem to have done very well this year is when the shots aren't dropping, which isn't very often, they're usually dropping, but when they aren't, when they go through spurts in the game, and everybody has that, they're staying consistent defensively. They are making life difficult just for every opponent. And again, that goes back to, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and Markkanen when he's healthy. When he's not healthy, they still have Dean Wade to throw out there. They still have Kevin Love. All of those guys, while not great defenders when you're talking about Wade and Love and Markkanen, they can create some havoc near the basket. They can body you up. I saw Dean Wade last night. He had a great defense against Chris Middleton of the Bucks. Middleton made the shot, but it was great defense. It took everything Middleton had to get the shot off. So those are the kind of things that, they're focusing on. Like, we have length. We have, guys in Mobley and Allen who can jump. And then you talk about guys like Okoro, who really only, he had 3 points against the Bucks. He didn't do much offensively. He didn't look to do much, but he made an impact defensively. Lamar Stevens made an impact defensively. They have those type of guys who are going to come in and make hustle plays. Rondo, all of those guys come in and just make such an impact when it comes to thwarting what the other team is trying to do. And when you do that, and JB Bickerstaff said this too, when you make stops, you get buckets. It's easier to get buckets because the other team's frustrated. They have their heads down. They're tired of working so hard for every shot. And that has played a huge role in the Cavs' success this season. Just the fact that they are demoralizing opposing teams because they're making it so difficult to score.
Yeah, and the other thing is they don't seem to ever hang their heads, which we talked about that last time, I think, too. It's impressive because they're such a young team. They just keep right on playing. All right, this was a viewer question that we had a couple days ago that I've been asking everybody. Cavs currently in third place, a game and a half behind the Heat in the Eastern Conference. Heat in the top spot right now. But Cavs a game and a half back. Realistically, where do you think the Cavs can realistically finish in the Eastern Conference when the regular season is over?
All things considered, they stay relatively healthy. Really their big three of Garland and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. If those three guys can stay healthy through these, next 33 games that there's left, they could finish third. You look at 1 through 6 in the Eastern Conference. Right now, they're just separated by no more than 2.5 games. 6 is the 76ers, and they're 2.5 games out of first place in the East. So, the Cavs are a game and a half out of first place in the East. But, I think 3 is probably the ceiling, maybe 2. You would assume that at some point the Nets are going to get healthy and get their act together. And the Bulls have kind of weathered the big storm, it seems like, when it comes to injuries right now. So, in Miami, those 3 teams are really looking like the top 3 teams in the East. But I would put the Cavaliers in that conversation with the way they're playing. They have more depth than those teams. They're playing hungrier than those teams. And they seem equally, at least, as cohesive as those 3 teams that I just mentioned that could potentially finish above them. So, if you look at 3 or 4, that's a pretty good ceiling for them when they've won 30 games. Vegas had them at 27. Some doofus named Amico had them about 25, 26 wins on the season. So they are overcoming all of that and surpassing expectations. There's no reason to believe they can't continue this.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Cavs. Head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason when we return. This one involving Kevin Love. We'll also talk a little bit about trade. Trade deadline now just 2 weeks from today. Sports for CLE. We'll be back talking Cavs. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and so is the job market. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. Register now for online and on-campus classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
We continue talking Cavs with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, this one about Kevin Love and the Cavs.
Dave, I was watching an interview with Kevin Love, and a question was asked of him with his long career, what other team does he compare this Cavs team to? And he replied that he thinks about it, but would not say, because he wants this team to stay hungry and play as an underdog. This is a great philosophy, and I hope transfers to the Browns. We as Browns fans have to stop bragging about them in the offseason and wait until they prove it on the field.
All right. We appreciate that. Ron Byer, our frequent voicemail contributor. I get it. I think part of the reason that Kevin Love doesn't want to compare this team to the 2016, they're so young. I mean, go out and find out what your ceiling is. Why limit yourself?
Right. That's just it. Really, they have an identity all themselves. it's been really, you don't see too many teams that are going into the season with this low of expectations at this level, really just surpass everything that everybody was expecting them to do. And we saw them in the preseason, right? And they didn't look very good. They looked like a 25 to 28 win team. But, you know, the identity that they have now is clearly something that just all of a sudden took off. It seemed like it took off at like that third game of the year, and they've been sticking with it ever since. They've overcome, you know, the loss of Colin Sexton, the loss of Ricky Rubio, extended losses to, you know, Lauri Markkanen and Isaac Okoro was out for a while. They've been able to weather all those storms, you know, and really that's because their identity is clearly something that you don't see very often. You know, I think now, you know, I don't mean to hype them up, but they very much remind me of those old Golden State Warriors teams before they made their runs to the finals, when Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green were still young, getting bounced in the first round, getting bounced in the second round, and eventually worked their way up. You know, when those guys first started, those Warriors teams first started, they were looked at very similarly to these Cavs. It's like, well, they have some nice players, but do they have a superstar? You know, and eventually you grow into that. And hopefully that would be the case for these Cavs, because really there's the ceiling. We're talking about a ceiling this year, but if you think about 2-3 years down the road, they could be really scary for the rest of the league.
The other thing that I know you wrote about a couple days ago, Cavs are not looking to move Colin Sexton. So take us through that and just I think it would be awfully hard for them to move Isaac Okoro as well. And trade deadline is a couple of weeks away, so we'll dovetail into that. But it doesn't sound like they have any interest really in trading Colin Sexton.
They would have to be, you know, if somebody made them an offer where they could find a guy who they feel is a really good fit, and the only way to get him is to give up Sexton, they would probably do that. But I don't foresee, and from everything I'm hearing, they're not making him readily available anyway. You know, they're not out there saying, hey, what would you give us for Colin Sexton? What they want to do is they do not realize that they, you know, need probably a little bit more backcourt scoring punch, as we've talked about before. They would love to add that and be able to add it, and they feel like they can add it without giving up any of their top 8-9 guys, you know, and not disrupt things too much. And they just want to find somebody to add to what they currently have. They don't really want to give up on Colin Sexton now. Potentially, that could be something they will revisit in the offseason with him being a restricted free agent. We've seen sign and trades before. They happen all the time in the NBA, but those generally happen in the summer. But I think, you know, everything I'm hearing right now is they're not pushing any sort of Colin Sexton trade. The contract of Ricky Rubio may be a different matter, because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent coming off major knee surgery. He may not be available till the middle of next season. So that's a different element altogether. But it sounds like Colin Sexton's going to be here for the rest of the year. And as we've seen, he's even opened the door to potentially returning for the playoffs if things remain on schedule.
A new name that kind of has been added to the mix, Robert Covington. Tell us a little bit about Covington and some of the other guys that you think are becoming more and more likely. 2 weeks from today is the trade deadline.
Yeah, Robert Covington, the small forward from the Trailblazers, he's not going to give you a bunch of scoring punch. He does have that capability to get you, 12 to 14 points a game. He's averaging about 8 now in Portland. And really, he's one of those kind of top flight defenders, wing defenders. He would add to this kind of what the Cavs have going on right now. He would be, you would think, a seamless fit off the bench, a guy who could come in, defend, hit some shots, kind of, that 3-and-D guy. And he's a veteran guy. He's been every place imaginable. You know, played with James Harden with the Rockets, been playing in Portland, played with the Sixers. He's been all over the place. And, you know, those were kind of well-traveled guys could fit in. And, you know, again, from the sounds of things, the Cavs would not have to give up a whole lot to get a guy like Robert Covington. The other name, of course, we've heard, and I've mentioned him before. Now I know that the Cavs have interest is Terrence Ross, the Magic shooting guard, who can also play small forward, veteran guy, comes off the bench, pro's pro, much more of a scorer than Covington, but doesn't dominate the basketball. So those are the kind of guys they want, guys who will come in, contribute, be a scoring threat, take some of the load off Darius Garland, and you know, just fit in seamlessly. And on top of everything else, you don't have to mortgage the farm or really give up a whole lot to go out and get those type of players.
So they are paying particular attention to fit, because the thought would be Kobe Altman realizes, Kobe Altman and JB Bickerstaff, and we got something kind of good going. Let's not, there's no need to upset what's going on here.
Right. You want a guy who's, you know, all the names we're hearing, Karis LeVert from the Pacers, and Ross and Covington and Eric Gordon from the Rockets. Those are all guys who have a history of, you know, punching the clock, coming in, producing, not getting worked up about their situation, not needing the basketball to be successful, not needing a bunch of shots. All of those guys want to be in a situation that is winning and is fun. Well, guess what the Cleveland Cavaliers are right now, right? They're both of those things. So those type of players could come in and obviously, you know, presumably would just fit seamlessly, would be content with whatever minutes or whatever shots they got. And that's the kind of player you're looking for.
Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. As always, man, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks so much, Sam.
All right. Thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Again, we always appreciate Sam's time and insight. Make sure you read him. Hoopswire.com, latest on the Cavs as well as the rest of the NBA. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guest, the D-Man, Dennis Maniloff from WTAM News Radio 1100, and Mark Munch Bishop from 1350 AM The Gambler. That is tomorrow at 4 o'clock on Sports for CLE. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody.